crises are necessary. They might be necessary as a means of evolving into more mature adult selves. So even when people come on a vision quest, sometime, not always, but sometimes, a crisis ensues after the vision quest. And the crisis is a necessary step of dismantling what needs to die in order to make room for what needs to be birthed.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with me, Dan Burgess. The story of Spaceship Earth is simple. We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. Like a spaceship, we have a finite amount of supplies with an intelligent operating system called nature, which keeps everything replenished as long as we all respect it and participate wisely. In this podcast, I'm in conversation with folk involved in regenerating life, shifting consciousness and reimagining how we can live more beautifully and peacefully. I talk with artists, writers, activists, designers, adventurers, healers, farmers, creative mavericks, and more. Their stories invite us to participate in the co-creation of life-sustaining cultures, in service to life, becoming crew on Spaceship Earth. Greetings, Earthling. Welcome to the Spaceship Earth podcast. This is Dan, your host. Thank you for tuning in. If it's your first time here, thanks for checking us out. Hope you enjoy the ride. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. We really appreciate your continued support. I hope you're managing to stay well in these deeply troubled times, while looking after yourself and trying to find joy where you can in the kind of sheer beauty and mystery and miracle of being alive on this extraordinary planet. This whole conflicting tension that I experience, and I know I'm hearing from all sorts of people, this how to hold these the overwhelm of what is going on this earth right now, the violence and the suffering that so many are experiencing, and yet how for those of us that are still experiencing a world where we're free, at least in some ways, from some of that, how to be okay with the beauty and the joy and the possibility that presents itself to us every day if we're able to see it and to notice it. And it's okay to feel that possibility and that joy, as well as feel and experience the extraordinary pain and suffering that so many are going through. And yeah, so I just wanted to speak to that, because as we've coming through the spring equinox, it feels that aliveness is there, that possibility, that kind of energy shift, but at the same time, how to carry all of this stuff, how to hold it all and acknowledge it and honour it, and some days to be okay with just stepping into the joy and the possibility, and other days potentially sinking into the sorrow and the pain of it all. So just wanted to say that if you're experiencing that, you're not alone, and it's okay, and it's important for us to also tune into the beauty. So, before we kick off, I wanted to say thank you to those of you that have flipped to the paid subscription on Substack, supporting the podcast, really helping us support the ongoing ability to record and put these podcasts out. It's the price of 1 pint of beer a month. I think if you live in the UK, that would go some way towards helping us with the cost of doing this. So thank you for those that have subscribed. If you're thinking about it, we really need the support from our listeners this year to keep going. So you can check that out at becomingcrew.substack.com. We'd be massively grateful for your support. And if you can't offer anything financially, the sharing of episodes, the feedback, the comments, the discussions on Substack, the posting onto your socials, all of this helps. So if you can't offer anything financially, the sharing of episodes that have connected with you really does help the whole overall mission. So everyone is needed. We're all crew, right? So thank you for that, and for all of those that are giving us feedback and messages and emails. Thank you. Keep them coming. It really is appreciated. So in this episode, I'm in conversation with Natasha Lythgoe and her practice, The Art of Rewilding. Now, Natasha works as a vision quest guide, a retreat leader and a mentor, work which has very much been shaped by her life as an artist and her Buddhist practice, which includes a real sort of personal kind of focus on the practices of wisdom, kindness and spaciousness within. And it's work she does with mind, body, psyche, soul and mystery, and in her words, sharing the skills that she has acquired that have been shared with her over 25 years of practice. Now, I've been following Natasha's work since we both met and trained together as outdoor learning nature guides on Chris Salisbury's inaugural Call of the Wild program, which was about 11 years ago now, I think. So I've been following Natasha's work since that time and been really curious, and this year really wanted to get her on to the podcast. In some ways, this episode follows on really nicely from our last episode with Vision Quest guide David Vendel-Berry, and in some ways it connects back to episode 79 at the start of this year with Dr. Rosalind Watts. Now, I thought when I was planning the conversation with Natasha that we might talk more again to Vision Quest and rites of passage, but instead this is a conversation, I think, which starts to explore the messy work of integration, or incorporation as Natasha prefers. It's about the work we must do if we're serious about paradigm shift type change and becoming the change that we seek, particularly following deeper rites of passage work, threshold work, or any kind of peak experience. So it's about how do we begin to trust the messy, wild aliveness inside of us and around us, in contrast to the kind of exhausted, limited, linear, rational ways that modernity wants to make sense of everything. This is an episode which invites us to inquire into exploring different intelligences, both within us and around us in the world, and especially our own body intelligence. How do we learn the language of our bodies and the clock of our bodies, which defies the very paradigms of extractivism and capitalism that we live within? It's about how we might learn to trust different ways of knowing the world and ourselves, something we talk about a lot on this podcast, which are not always comfortable and clear. Learning to trust other, I'd argue, vaster ways of knowing to help us navigate through these times. This episode is also a bit different in that it features a very spontaneous, co-created somatic practice experience which Natasha offered me as we were kind of in mid-conversation. So I invite you as listeners to follow along when Natasha guides the body intelligence practice and maybe see it as a playful sensory exploration. Christiana Figueres said recently that systemic change is deeply personal, and I think this episode is touching on that idea. There's something in this conversation that invites us into the uncomfortable, the mysterious, the messy, and at times, I would say, beautiful work, which doesn't fit easily into the commercialization of peak experience, spiritual transformation work that we encounter all around us, particularly on places like Instagram. This leaning into your authentic purpose with process and practice and journey, which is often being guided by a much wilder, unpredictable, more feral, more than human life force. And it reminds me something that Bayo Akomolafe once said to me: may your road be rough. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this conversation, so let's cut to it. This is the Spaceship Earth podcast in conversation with Natasha Lythgoe. Enjoy.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with my dad, Dan Burgess.
Natasha, welcome to the Spaceship Earth podcast.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
You too.
Yeah, whereabouts are you on Spaceship Earth right now?
I'm in my in-laws' house in Upper Austria.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that sort of, are there mountains around you? I'm imagining
There are. In yonder distance, there are very unsnowy mountains.
Oh, really? Should they be snowy at this time?
They would have been snowy at this time. Yeah.
So something I've been asking my guests this year, as to kick off really, is how would you describe the vibes on Spaceship Earth right now as you're experiencing them?
Well, I experienced that we're in quite choppy water consistently, and that the choppy water will continue. So we need to find ways to navigate choppy water together.
I hear you. So on the choppy waters, because that's really, I mean, I guess that's how I see your work in many ways. What I know of what you do is you're out in the waters helping navigate. And I guess, what I like to do is to try and to help listeners, give listeners some context before we sort of open up into, what is happening right now in the work that you're doing out in the world. But just to give listeners a little bit of your backstory, so they get a sense of, where you're at now. And I guess, I know that you hold, you do quite a lot. You hold quite a lot of different qualities and practices. And the older I get, I feel like that all the most beautiful people tend to have a lot of things that they're kind of working and moving with. But I think it would be lovely just to give people a sense of those threads that you're really, really alive in the work that you do, where they've come from, a little bit of your backstory, the pathway, the seeds, I guess, that have sort of led you to do the work you do. Because you are, you're an artist, you're a Vision Quest guide, you're a mentor. Yeah, you have a lot of different qualities to your practice. And so it'd be really lovely to give folks a little bit of a sense of, how you've come to be doing what you do.
Mm. Well, I'm not going to start a year, Doc.
No. I was born in Croydon. That'd be a very long podcast.
Mayday hospital. Well, I sort of fell into Buddhism when I was 26. That's 25 years ago. And that has been an ongoing thread in my life. Yeah. It made sense to me. Actually, I didn't read any books about Buddhism. My then boyfriend's father was a Buddhist monk, and he sort of encouraged me to learn to meditate. And then once I was sitting on the cushion, I was like, oh, this is my path, part of my path. And at various stages in my life, I've been more of a hardcore Buddhist and more of a feral Buddhist.
I love feral Buddhists.
I like to identify with that now. Yeah. But I trained as an artist for a good long 8 years. So I feel that the creative thread of my being was just born with that. I don't have any lack of confidence around my own sense of creativity. And so I followed that through art school. And I'd say that when I was 30, so I mostly used photography as my medium. And when I was 30, I was in the mountains in the Alps in France. And my photographic practice and my Buddhist practice sort of collided. And I had this experience where the world became, I don't know really how to say it, but it became alive. Probably for the first time in my life, which is a pretty disturbing thing to say, age 30. But my meditation practice sort of galvanized my attention. And the photographic practice galvanized my attention in such a way that a doorway just went. And that was quite a key moment for me, because then the photograph became redundant and the experience became the most precious thing. Oh yeah. So even though I spent a period of time working as a fine artist, I also alongside was working as a Buddhist prison chaplain in men's prisons. So these two threads sort of continue. And then when I was at my solo show in Paris, which I'd been working towards for a really long time, I felt really numb. I thought, oh, this isn't good. I've been working towards this for aeons and I'm not that bothered. And at that moment, I just had this very loud, blaring voice, which was, get out.
Get outside.
Yes, get outside. I mean, actually, I was outside a lot with my photographic practice, but it was very sort of in the distant, you could say, with my glass of red wine on the pavement in Paris. And I'd been studying David Abrams' work for my thesis because I was just finished a master's. I love his work and the work of Merleau-Maurice-Ponty. So a few days later, a friend rang me and said, David Abrams coming to again. And there I was with you, actually.
That was Dan Schumacher, wasn't it?
Trying to contain my sort of, what do you call it, a mind crush. I don't even know what you call that on David Abrams.
I know. I've still got that, to be honest, for him.
Yeah. Yes, me too. Along with many others. So I think, I don't know if it was then or before then, I did a rites of passage program with Bill Potkin and Janine up in the north of Scotland. And well, that just, it was his work that I was most interested. It was that kind of work that I was most interested in. And I began that kind of work there. And it was so unpleasant, I can't tell you. Like the day after the course ended, my life fell apart and I thought, God, that costs a lot of money to get to this. And since then, I've been training with mostly Annie Bloom, who used to be a lead guide for AVI and the School of Lost Borders, and then apprenticing with my co-guide, Werner Pilz, who teaches and trains Vision Quest guides at Eschwege. So it's been a long haul. That's been a period of about, well, nine years really. And I feel like I'm still apprenticing to the work. Yeah. And then just to mention, because it's important, along the way, I realized that asking myself to be outside in nature for any length of time alone triggered trauma. You know, not surprisingly, really. And so I began with somatic experiencing and moved into focusing. And I've been trained a little in trauma, because I think that it's really needed when you're inviting people to go out. There's no point in them going out in a state of contraction and staying in that state of contraction for the whole time, and the experience being an endurance. I mean, one of the purposes of the experience is something that moves through the body through open. And if you're in survival mode, there's no openness. So the latter phase of some of my work has been a lot around embodiment. I think it's key, actually.
God, you know what? There's so much that's coming up for me as you're talking about this. I just wanted to pick out a couple of things, because I feel like they're really interesting threads. The first bit, when you were actually talking about your this flip from, you know, these for taking photos to experience, you know, that, because that in itself is like, that's huge. Well, in fact, makes me sort of feel something. So it's so, and then it goes on to, you were saying, the type of work that you were being drawn, you know, the type of courses or the type of training that you're being drawn to. You said there's that type, that Bill Plotkin's work, and I guess this kind of soul, we might call it soul work. And then when you're speaking to the, you know, to working on the land, taking people through rites of passage, vision quests, whatever, you know, being on your own. And that sense of trauma that was coming up for you and has led you into sort of exploring this from a somatic perspective. But that, for me, because I'm looking constantly at our culture and figuring out, like, you know, what's unraveling and how people are starting to sort of move. Some people are moving towards the edges, others are kind of running further into the middle. But even that point, that letting go that you're speaking, you know, because for me, that's bringing up a whole image of this. When we do when we are kind of stripped of all of that stuff that's keeping us, keeping our attention away from ourselves and this world in us and around us, it's almost like when you turn that off, it's almost making me think, you're saying this contraction in the body, because there's this sense of all the trauma or all the kind of stuff a lot of us are suppressing suddenly is just there, right? There's nothing to... There's nowhere to go with it. I'm really fascinated by that kind of journey, that pathway that feels very, your experience feels like, something that's part of this greater cultural stuckness and tension, really knotty place that many of us find ourselves in. So anyway, I'm not sure if that was a question or just an observation.
Well, I could say something.
Yes, do.
I mean, any doorways that we're looking for, or we might be looking for, maybe a doorway that we might label soul, encounter, or enchantment, or great mystery. They can only be found if we're present, and presence can only be found if we're in our bodies. And usually when we encounter our bodies, which not many of us do, we encounter emotion, and often it's challenging emotion. And unless we're willing to turn to face that, or have the tools to be able to turn to face that without it becoming a catastrophe, without it overwhelming us and dominating our experience, then we're screwed. I hear fancy talk about self-development programs in nature and leadership this and corporate that. And I think to myself, we can't figure our way out of this mess. We can't do it alone, and we can't do it using our rational minds. And somehow we've got to find a way to drop down, because only through dropping in and down are we able to open to something that is more than the content of our tiny selves.
We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. How bonkers is that? You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast.
If you'd like to support the running of the Spaceship Earth podcast, head over to our Substack and sign up. You'll get every episode straight to your inbox, weekly writing, plus other crew offerings. We're grateful for whatever you can give. Join us at becomingcrew.substack.com.
I'm totally with you. That's beautiful. I'm noticing in my body as you're talking about this stuff, I'm noticing how it makes me feel, because, you articulate this so simply and beautifully, and I will articulate it through a lot of rambling nonsense. But I guess for the, that's, I'm there, and I experience the world now like that. It's taken me a lot of painful, traveling and breaking up and falling apart and all of the stuff you're talking to. And I think that's, we'll get into your work, because this is what you're guiding now and supporting people to go through, I think is, but I'm the same thing. Like once you allow yourself, to step, to sort of drop, to come into our bodies, to open up to all of the mess and the stuff that might make no sense. It might be quite scary. If you've got the tools, the practices, the communities, and the persistence to keep working, then my experiences are all kinds of possibilities can emerge that we can't even really grasp right now. It's not even really possible to intellectualize what the future can look like if we just keep carrying on trying to do things a bit better, but so it's deep work, I guess. But, one of the big things in this podcast, one of the big things we're constantly exploring, and, even the metaphor of the Spaceship Earth, passengers and crew, it's the story of separation. It's like you're either sort of part of this great living mystery, or you're sort of stuck in this idea that we're sort of on top of something that's kind of, dead and mechanical and whatever. And increasingly, it's this knowing that without allowing ourselves to go into this deeper work, we're just perpetuating the same behaviours and the same patterns. And so I'm really interested in hearing from practitioners like yourself about the work you're doing, what you're learning, and why. Yeah, and really to open this up to more people, because my sense is particularly in the work that I'm involved in, that without a parallel deepening and opening up of ourselves and the communities that we're with, and understanding our relationships now in these different ways of how life is happening in us and around us, alongside the change work we're trying to do in the world. For me, it's not either or, it's both. And so I'm really interested in getting into this work. Your work is called The Art of Rewilding, and you have this phrase on your website, remembering our rooted selves. What is the frame of this work that you're using that's really resonating for you right now? And whether you could speak a little bit to that.
It might be elemental soul.
Okay. Let's talk about elemental soul. What is elemental soul?
In 2016, I was in the Alps. was in the lower part of the mountains for a period doing some practice and research. And how do I say that? What sort of arrived as soon as I arrived with my intention were incredibly strong dreams. And what evolved was a kind of, I don't really know how to articulate it. I would paint the dream, and then reflect on the dream in some way and look at the map of the territory where I was, and then find something on the map which resonated with the dream, and then hike there and make an offering of the painting, some kind of ritual for the space. It was like this little treasure hunt between dream and land that moved through me. Dream, land, and ritual. And then, when was that? I don't know. I'm going to say a few years ago. So I'm really into focusing, and focusing is not what it says on the tin. It's where you drop into the felt sense of your experience and you follow the thread, something like that. It's hard to really put it into a small phrase, but through my focusing practice, I began to have experiences of subtle energy moving, which was absolutely not of my own making and didn't appear to be me, which became very interesting to me. And at the same time, I had this dream of this earth womb in my now dead grandmother's garden. And so this thing of dream, unfolding of dream and ritual and the felt sense evolved into a program, 3 programs I ran called Following the River Underground. And now this time around, I'm working with story, because in stories, I mean, like dreams, there's this sort of alchemical pressure points that when you hear something, even in a poem, it kind of touches somewhere. And if you can follow that into the body using the felt sense, and track it in a certain way, it leads you somewhere. I think really it leads you, you're tracking your own enchantment or mythic tale by doing that. That's the work that I'm really interested in, because there's a lot of unknowing in it. That you can't know how to do this. It's a call and response. It's a call and response between the imaginal and soulful realms and the place in which I'm abiding, where I might go and make rituals or go out and make threshold walks or prayer. And then this sort of unfolding mythic dimension of my own life. It's quite hard to say it simply. Sorry.
No, I know it's not at all. And I mean, I'm there only because probably again probably for me the last 3 years that I've been probably much more intentionally trying to experiment a bit more with some of what you're speaking to, trying to bring more threshold, more ritual based practices into my daily life, my, whatever it might be, and then allowing myself to, which is what we've been doing with Becoming Crew, with Mark and Eva, is like trying to sort of also create and offer, containers for experiences that allow us to play really to experiment with these kinds of invitations, like you say, that are kind of quite hard to sort of lock down, because it is a dance, right? It's a relational kind of exploration. And when you were talking about myth and story, and again, it just sort of made me think both how beautiful and how terrifying that is because, like, when I think of the sort of stories that many of us are being offered in these times, particularly the sort of, the stories that are coming down from the top, if you like, versus the stories that maybe are coming from beneath us and around us. And so when you were speaking about those, those house, stories, sometimes they enter us or things in them. it was just making me jump again to like, because we're being bombarded with story all the time and often. So anyway, it sounds beautiful, and I feel it, and I without knowing, you know, what these look and feel like, I can feel them. And again, I think what you're speaking to is this again, this sort of tension that possibly how we're being invited into exploring and going down into these doorways and pathways and cracks, but actually we're still living in these systems and cultures that are keeping us quite locked into not wanting to go there, if that makes sense. But I guess we're sort of, as things unravel, the you know, the desire to go and explore feels more vital, more urgent in many ways.
Well, I would say that we can't do it. We can't make this journey alone. And I don't mean just we need other humans when I say that. That's not where I'm limiting community to. And I'm not even limiting it to what one might call matter. I don't think we can make the journey alone. And I'm tired of psychologizing and secularizing the work that the territories that I've been practicing and working in. It's become almost, what's the word, where you're affronted. I feel somehow affronted by the level of limiting something to self-development now. And so I would say that we're desperately in need of fostering relationship with, however you would language that. You might language that the sacred. You might language it great mystery. There's all these words that I can use which people will run a mile from, like prayer.
Yeah, spirits.
Ritual, spirit.
Yeah.
And yet shamanism is the fastest growing religion in the UK. And if that hasn't got spirit, then it's got nothing.
I think I'm really pleased you brought all this up because I think this is again, so part of, like, my sense is, this need often to try and, you know, quantify, justify, explain, be able to sort of put things in a box that people understand what it is. And of course, what I'm hearing from you, and what I'm on this journey. I'm with you. I'm trying to speak to this in my own ways as well, which is, it's kind of like, my experience is, if you show up and you open up and you trust, then you don't need to have this explained, because you'll just feel it. So it's kind of like, and you'll feel it in the way that's you're experiencing it, and you'll find a way to describe it in your own vocabulary. For me, the thing is trust, commitment to show up, commitment to hold things lightly, and to open up, open up to what else is going on in you, in your body, around you, and be curious about that. And for me, that's sort of the starter of this. And then who knows what you experience and how you decide to describe and story, because it's very, my sense is, it's very unique to each person, and how they're how they're sort of journeying with all of this. But it's also my sense, and I'd love to talk a bit, you talk about you can't do this work alone, and so this idea of what is it even to be in community, and what does that, this idea that, say, you can be communing with a whole web of life that you might not even be able to explain to anyone what that is, but you're not alone. And I think that is the thing, isn't it? Is that we've been sort of conditioned to believe that we are these separate beings in this world, and that doesn't really help us open up to these possibilities, because it feels, I think from my own personal experience, I could have, thinking back to my own journeys, could feel daft or alone or shameful, or even thinking that
there's other life around me, you know, and like when I'm talking to trees and convening, you know, having a chat with my dad who's shown up as a goldfinch is what seems to have happened since he died 2 years ago. It keeps coming around me in goldfinches. But it's like people think, all right, mate, all right, okay, whatever. But I'm like, well, I don't need to explain it to you because I know how these things are making me feel. I'm feeling things that make me feel actually like I'm not alone.
Yeah. In a way, I wonder whether you do need to explain it to the other people, because the more we collude with consensus reality, the more we'll be bound by its parameters. And it's only, the only gift that comes from authenticity is our gift. And if we hide that away from people, or we don't share it because we think they'll out us, or I don't know, shun us, then we're somehow colluding in this obscene sense of what it is to be normal.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I love your goldfinch story. It resonates entirely with me, and may you share it with everyone you meet.
Oh. Yeah, you're right. It's a really valid thing. We've been finding of late doing these, communities of practice, these small communities of people that we work with, and these stories emerge, right? But it's still feels like it's in that space, and we're not quite sure how to speak more widely to it, And so on that, I'd love to talk about. Well, there's a couple of things really that come up. Can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, this idea of building on what we're talking about here is how people are showing up, and how you're seeing this work evolve as time goes on. I just want to give listeners a sense of when people are showing up, what are they coming to you with? I'm just trying to help more people understand, find that there are people like them that are really sort of moving into that, wanting to sort of start to do this kind of work.
People that come to me, some of the things that they might say is that they're struggling to be authentic. It's a big one. How do I show myself to my husband and my community that I've lived with all of my life and not be shunned by them? So authenticity is a big one. How can I be authentic and remain in connection? I get a lot of that. I have a lot of loneliness. Where are my kin? Where is my community? Resonance with the way that I work, but feeling completely alone in the physical world in relationship to other humans. And I have people who are looking for community and soulful connection and ways to grow, basically ways to grow in soulful, meaningful, potent way. Yeah. And of course there's the whole crises, isn't there? Not to forget.
Oh yeah, shit, the crises. We were going to talk about crises, weren't we? Segue. I mean, you have this Margaret Mead quote on your site. Can I read that one? Do you like that one?
Yeah, I like that one. I'll read it. Yeah. An interesting idea that turns up in myths and stories is that the crises we experience, both individually and collectively, are not here to destroy us, but rather to break the spell of the little self, and to break the spell of the collective lives that are also imagined as small and not connected to the source and origins of life. That the crises that we experience individually or collectively are here to crack the shell and break us open to the inner eyes of the soul, and to give us the opportunity to reconnect to the deeper self, which knows why we are here and what our life purpose already is. It's a good quote, isn't it?
Isn't it?
And can we just say that to be authentic means to be true to oneself? It's a very, very dangerous phenomenon. Rare people can do that. But whenever people do it, they achieve such beauty, such grace, such contentment that you cannot imagine. And I don't know how to pronounce the person's name that said that. Ragan Shri Ran, something like that.
So let's speak a bit to that. What's because this idea that, I guess I'm shortcutting a bit, like crises as catalysts for breaking destructive patterns of self, let's say, or
Wow.
at a bigger level. I mean, let's talk about it. What's the crises all about for you? Why are you so interested in that?
Well, I would say something else. I would say crises might break open. That crises are necessary. They might be necessary as a means of evolving into more mature adult selves. So even when people come on a vision quest, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, a crisis ensues after the vision quest. And the crisis is a necessary step of dismantling what needs to die in order to make room for what needs to be birthed. You cannot birth something without going through the dying to what is no longer alive process. You can't bypass that. And that is often experienced as messy, inconvenient, and usually, inconvenient, messy, horrible territory that we have to. That's why, I bang on and on about the work of incorporation, because unless we can land the experience of the rite of passage that we've gone through, then it remains a pop-up peak experience in which maybe we had these fantastic moments that remains forever unmaterialized or metabolized through us and into the world. If we can't metabolize it and bring it into the world, then what is the point? Because the whole point is that we are offering ourselves in our healthiest, most mature state and our medicine to the world for the health of the world. And without that key component, it's just another walk in the park.
There are two stories on Spaceship Earth, a passenger story and a crew story. The passenger story is based on extraction, transaction and distraction, and it's leading us towards collapse. The crew story is based on connection, cooperation and participation. It leads towards regeneration.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with my dad, Dan Burgess.
And at least when I hear that, so your incorporation, it's another kind of way of speaking about integration, right? And but I'm sensing a more embodied sort of focus on it.
It's in the word incorporation.
Corpus was Latin for body, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Corpse, dead people. I mean, obviously, death, life. But this is what I love talking about this, because this is, you talked about, because I can sense all kinds of stuff in there. There's the story that's dying of capitalism and globalization and consumerism and all the isms, right? And then you've got our little part in that's dying, and the part of us that was never born probably anyway, because of that stuff. And but the integration, the incorporation work, that is, at least my experience, it's not convenient. It doesn't fit into the culture, because to do proper incorporation work, it's messy. You got to keep working with it. It's like, it's practice, and you know what I mean? And you got to show up, and you can't just come off the peak experience and go, right, I'm sorted. And then, a week down the line, everything starts caving in. And so this integration, I had an amazing guest, Dr. Ros Watts, on a few weeks ago. She was a psychedelic therapist, but her work now is in integration. She's built, because she's like, you can do psychedelic therapy, you can pop out at the end of it, But A, you're going back into a sick culture, so you're going to get sick again. But if you're not working with the medicine day in, day out, we're not creating a new culture. We're just, so it's similar threads, right? And her thing was, community. We have to build communities that can help each other to continue to do the integration work. And her sense was human and more than human community. It's kind of like, it's not just, her thing is with trees, really. She sort of builds this practice over a year to help people integrate through. But let's talk about that, because it feels like, again, it's the work we're doing with Becoming Crew. It's practice driven. It's all about, we can't just take the bits that we love and go, we've got to work with it all.
Well, part of the reason why I have created the elemental soul piece and the Following the River Underground is because it is an ongoing community of people that meet and navigate the territories around incorporation together for a longer period of time. So yes, I think community is key, very helpful for that. Or community and or a mentor alongside, I have my own mentor who I visit with and go, wow, what's, so I think it's something that you can't really do alone, the work of incorporation. And you need someone that's a bit further down the road from you to be alongside you, because, they've kind of been there in their own way, and they're probably a little less flustered about it than you are, and maybe able to kind of signpost a little bit the territory that you're in. We have to be able to stay very close to the body when we're doing that work. So I'm not going to say it only has to be like this, but in my experience, in Gendlin's focusing work, there's something called the fresh edge, which I sometimes call forward flow. And I experience it in the body. I'm talking personally, although other people experience it too, as kind of the forward edge of a murmuration of starlings. And it does not come from the rational mind. It holds, encompasses, and is more than contradictory states of being. And through the body, in its own time, at its own pace, which is inconvenient to the pace of the modern world, it will slowly begin to kind of feel its way forward. And that is pre-verbal. And so for me, that is wisdom that comes through experience. In there is wisdom that comes from experience that offers something that is not yet known and begins to bring it into being, beginning in the body. Which probably sounds incredibly abstract, but it's not when you're feeling it. So for incorporation has to involve the body. It comes from more of a psychological background, and incorporation is definitely rites of passage language. And I think it's there because of the body bit in the middle, is my sense. Because we have to it's vision and transformation, isn't it? Anyone can have, I don't want to be, blasé, but anybody can have a vision. Many people can open up alchemical portals, but the hard work is the landing it back into your everyday life. And that is the most important part. And it's the bit that begins after the vision, the rite of passage ends. That's the hard work. And it's bloody difficult. I'm in one at the moment. I went on a vision fast with my guide, my own mentor, back in September, and it's been a shit show for me. And of course, there's this part of me, I've got to show up for work. I'm meant to be this sort of stable, steady mentor. And there's this other part of me that's like, what the hell is going on? And it's not like I'm no stranger to emotive processes in my life, but this it's like we invite in these wilder life forces when we enter into this ritual alchemical container, and then they show up and they do something, and we have to find our way. We have to navigate that somehow through. And the only way is through, and you're spat out the other end. At some point you come out the other end. That's no easy journey.
Gosh. I did my first quest last July, and I have found in the last, and I guess I came away with with a lot, holding lots. I let go of a lot actually, and came away with a load more stuff to work with. There's something about this working with this embodied intelligence that is it's very difficult for people. I'm saying people, I'm talking about me, but I'm also talking about, I guess, my perception of people in our modern Western culture, like the UK, that I'm seeing in my life, that I'm working with, whatever, to know how to trust that, because we're all stuck in our heads, and to have the kind of infrastructure, and again, I don't mean that in a sort of, I mean that in a very organic, alive way, but to help us build that trust. And then it's making me think of men. I don't know why. I'm finding men are coming up, and I look at so much of our, destructiveness in the culture, and I look at, even just the folks that are sort of coming into some of the experiences we are providing, and it's predominantly women, which is interesting. And so it's making me think something about this. How can we get more into the body, and how can this become more connected, so it becomes, you know what I mean? Like, not just sort of like, oh, that's happening, but more like help more people in. Do you know what I mean? Because it feels like we're so stuck. We're so stuck in the sort of peak experience, take away the thing in my head, got some weird stuff going on in my body, don't know what the fuck to do with it, go back to the head, avoid building the trust, avoid going on the real difficult, ongoing, I'd say joyful, actually. I'd say fucking really joyful journey as well as difficult, but there's a lot of joy in.
Let's do it now.
Yeah.
Let's do it now together. I could do something with you now, and then your listeners can have a sense of it.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, right. What we're gonna do?
All right. So what you need to do though is, which might be a bit tricky, is you need to be still, relatively still. Let's say relatively still.
Stop moving.
Whilst we do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to say, first of all, I'm really happy to be here with you, Dan. And anything you share, I'm going to hold with care and respect. And I'm just going to ask you a question. And the question is, what are you noticing in your body right now? What's...
A kind of a racing sort of energy, slightly mad.
Yeah, where is that racing, slightly mad?
Sort of in my chest and into my kind of shoulders. So it's the top part of my body.
Yeah. So it's just there in the chest and into your shoulders.
Yeah, and sort of neck.
Also the neck.
Mm.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're just going to say in a really sweet voice, hello to that racing, slightly mad something that's in your chest, shoulders and moving up the neck. Hello. Thanks for coming.
Hello, thanks for coming. Racing, mad energy.
Yeah, that's it. And you can say that out loud or in your head, but it needs to be sincere. And then I'm going to invite you to rest alongside it. Rest alongside that. So no need to manipulate it in any way. Just, hi, I see you. And then I'm going to ask you, what are you noticing in your body now?
Bit more space. Actually dropping down a little bit into my legs feels a bit more spacious.
So the spaciousness is somehow dropping towards your legs. Is that right? Interesting.
There's like it feels like there's a bit of a sort of flowing down in the body.
And a bigger breath. I saw it. There you go.
Bigger breath.
Yeah. So in your own way, you might want to say hello to something spacious that's dropping down somewhere towards the legs. And then there came a breath. Hi. Thanks for coming. And just noticing what the body's showing. What can you sense in the body?
I'm sensing a kind of like, do you need to do this more? I'm sensing a kind of like.
Oh, is that resistant?
And a sense of this is something you need to do more to.
Oh, I see.
Just to stop and let that crazy energy flow down.
Or let that crazy energy just be itself.
Oh, yeah, right. Could be at the moment it's flowing down, but who knows where it wants to go.
Yeah, so something's flowing down.
But something's happening.
Yeah. And so there's something about, I could do this more. Yeah, so there's a recognition or something maybe supportive about it. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's just making me feel like this is utterly like it's because I also recognize that I haven't been honoring my own space that much of late, or my own need to sit with no response. That's it. Yeah,
exactly. Great, love it. So there's something about a longing for your own space and not needing to respond. Yeah. So you might say hello to that one. And when you said that, I could feel tingling all down my leg. And so before we finish this, I'm just going to invite you to have a sense of appreciation for all that your body showed to you. And then gently, in your own time, opening a little more to the space between.
Thank you, Natasha.
That was a taste. That's for you.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's a you might not have ever listened to a podcast, but that's the first time we've done anything like that on the podcast. So beautiful. Thank you.
When we drop into the body, we're looking for equanimity, which sounds like a big formal word, but actually it means that I welcome this in exactly the same way as I welcome, and I don't try to force anything or manipulate anything. And when I open to this, it allows the possibility that that may also be here. So we don't identify with one single experience. When we do that, we're screwed. So there's this and maybe that, and maybe this as well. There might be this and then an idea about this, and then we need to welcome the idea about this. And then there's more. There's this whole more that surrounds the content. You know, and when we get the conditions just right, when they're all kind of just right, I can feel them just right, then perhaps that thing called forward flow, you know, some kind of felt sense resolution might begin to move. And it might take a year because it works at its own pace. But when it comes, it is. Because I know it's not of my own making somehow. Well, in some way it's my own making because I learned how to befriend myself through the body and then rest back on the saddle of the retired horse that doesn't want to go anywhere and then open to the horizon. So I've put a little bit of work in, but really something's getting out of the way. Something like that.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Pleasure.
There's so much I want to talk about, but we're not going to do it now because you've got to get a train.
I know. I recently saw an article in a magazine about rites of passage. And my first response was, yay, more people need to be doing this. And then I read the article and it was shallow, consumerist and misleading. And my heart sank and I thought, oh no, everyone's going to do rites of passage training over a few weekends and then suddenly be experts like they were with mindfulness. And so I really would encourage you and me and whoever else to just be really careful about who they choose to guide them on these intense initiations which rock you to your core. People to be able to choose wisely so that when they're at their most vulnerable, they're really taken care of. In the UK, there's no certification process around this. In Germany, as you can imagine, there is. And it means that there's a certain standard and people can feel safe that whoever they go to, they're in that standard. And we don't have it in the UK. And in some ways, I love that about the UK, that, you know, there's this sort of freedom. And in other ways, I get wary. I've had really shitty teachers, heard shitty teachers teaching shitty mindfulness, and it puts people off it. And they say, I hate it. And I say, you probably hate it because you've been taught it badly. You've been taught hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is not mindfulness. So I feel protected.
Yeah, no, I hear it. And I find, it's a kind of recurring theme in lots of things that are being offered, right? Because again, and part of it I think is to do with the, you know, we're plugged into an extractive, monetized culture. So a lot of folks are offering things within that context, and might have a you know, their heart might be signaling that they're doing the right, you know, the intention can be coming from the right place, but it's the ability to actually to really understand, I guess, what you're inviting people into. And I guess the conversation with you and the conversation I'm having a lot, and the work that we're trying to do with the crew is you know, you call it incorporation, integration, practice, ongoing, because that for me feels like, you know, it's as important, probably more, but it's as important as the actual quest, the rites of passage, the ritual itself, right? Because without that ability to help people, carry these things back into their worlds, then that feels to me, and I think that's possibly one of the most challenging areas we have, is how do you support that and, give that kind of support around that in a world which makes ongoing support and nurturing people, it's not easy to do in this culture we find ourselves in.
Well, certainly we need to make that happen ourselves. We need to make community happen ourselves. That's for sure.
But that's the thing I'm sort of sensing as well on with practitioners, is like, how does an incorporation, integration, network, ecology, mycelium, what does that look like? Because a lot of it comes back to, I need others around me to help or to support or to share or to fall apart with or to...
Yes. We do. I think we absolutely do. Yeah, that lie of independent is just that.
Yeah.
It's a horrible, isolating lie.
Right, exactly.
Not
which was
reality.
Not what we were created to be as humans. So listen, what I wanted to just finish with, if I could, is to ask you, we have this story of becoming crew on Spaceship Earth, and I just want to know, what this idea of becoming crew, what it brings up for you. What does it speak to you in these times?
I think it's really important that we find ways to be able to turn to face the world. And it's only by facing the world that we'll be able to navigate the choppy waters. So in terms of your language of becoming crew, that involves turning to face the world, and that involves all of the things that we've spoken about. I'd say that. But also, alongside that, don't forget to listen to the song of the blackbird, because we also exist with exquisite beauty alongside awful horror. Both exist, and if we turn to one and not the other, we're doomed either way. Yeah.
That's a beautiful reminder. Thank you for that. I'm going to just link to all of your stuff in the show notes for people to find you. Just so much love for what you do and how you show up and everything that you offer. And thank you for all of that. And it's been a pleasure to have a bit of your time today. And wow, there's a lot in that conversation. So thank you. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation and the slightly more experimental nature. That was a little bit of an edge for me. I just went with it. Went with that invitation from Natasha. Please, let us know how that landed for you. We'd love to hear from you. Jump in the comments on Substack or send us an email if that's more your thing, hello@thespaceship.earth, or put a comment on Instagram. Really keen to hear what comes up. In general, how some of these conversations this year, which have had this kind of thread of deeper work, how they're landing. Check out Natasha's work in the links, and and if you're enjoying this, please, generally the Spaceship Earth podcast, maybe share an episode with a friend, or give us a post on your socials. All of this would be very, very helpful to growing the listening and the awareness of the stories and conversations we're sharing here. And probably the best thing you could do for us, if you want to do something, is to subscribe to us on the Substack. That's becomingcrew.substack.com. That way we will, every episode will be emailed into your inbox. And also, as I said, if you can afford
the price of a pint a month, a pint of beer a month, about £7. That would go some way to helping support the ongoing costs of the Spaceship Earth podcast. So you can do all that on the Substack, becomingcrew.substack.com. I'm going to play out with the track. This is from my dear friend Will Flisk, who I've featured before on the podcast. Will is an artist, musician, producer based in North Devon in the UK. I'm going to link to his work in the show notes. He's prolific, always releasing music. This is a track called Long Pig. Until next time, peace and out.
This podcast is created in service to life, for you. It takes time, funds and energy to make. If you'd like to contribute to the running costs, you can donate the price of a cuppa or a pint. Find the link on our website. This podcast wouldn't exist without the following crew: Charlie Shred, Audio Jedi; Seaman Home Burgess, Engine Room; Willow Burgess, Jingles.
Thank you.